The sun hung low over the hidden leaf village, casting long shadows across the training grounds where Naruto Uzumaki stood, fists clenched and determination burning in his bright blue eyes. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of cherry blossoms and the distant chatter of villagers going about their day. But Naruto's focus was razor sharp, locked onto the figure before him, a mysterious puppeteer clad in dark robes, his face hidden behind a wooden mask carved with eerie, lifeless eyes. The Puppetmaster's fingers twitched, and the air hummed with the sound of chakra strings as a massive, multi-armed puppet unfolded from the shadows, its joints creaking ominously. Naruto wiped sweat from his brow, his mind racing. He'd been tracking this rogue shinobi for days after reports of missing villagers and strange, mechanical constructs lurking in the forest. The Puppetmaster was no ordinary foe, his creations were said to be nearly indestructible, animated by forbidden techniques that blurred the line between human and machine. Naruto gritted his teeth, recalling Jiraiya's warnings about underestimating an enemy's abilities. But he wasn't about to back down. Not when innocent lives were at stake. With a burst of speed, Naruto lunged forward, his orange jumpsuit a blur as he formed a series of hand signs. Shadow Clone Jutsu, he shouted, and a dozen identical copies materialized around him, each mirroring his aggressive stance. The Puppetmaster chuckled, a dry, hollow sound, as his puppet's arms whirred to life, blades extending from its wrists. The clones charged, kunai flashing, but the puppet moved with terrifying precision, slicing through them like paper. Naruto's eyes widened as the real threat became clear. This wasn't just a mindless doll. It was learning, adapting. Before he could react, the puppet's fist slammed into his gut, sending him skidding backward. He coughed, tasting blood, but forced himself to stand. "All right, you want to play rough?" Naruto growled, his fingers curling as red chakra began to seep from his skin. The Kyuubi's power surged within him, his whisker marks darkening, his nails sharpening into claws. The Puppetmaster's mask tilted slightly, as if intrigued, but he gave no other reaction. His puppet, however, shifted stance, its torso splitting open to reveal a barrage of senbone needles coated in a sickly green liquid, poison. Just as the needles launched, a blur of green and black crashed into the battlefield, knocking Naruto aside with surprising strength. "Whoa there, buddy. Didn't your sensei teach you to watch for sneak attacks?" Rock Lee grinned, his bushy eyebrows waggling as he landed in a wobbly crouch. His face was flushed, his breath reeking of sake, and his movements were exaggerated, almost clumsy. But his reflexes were still sharp, drunkenly sharp. The senbone clattered harmlessly against the ground where Naruto had been standing. Naruto blinked. "Lee? What the heck are you doing here?" Lee hiccuped, swaying slightly before steadying himself. "I was celebrating my latest victory with a small drink when I heard the commotion. A true shinobi never ignores a call to battle." He struck a dramatic pose, nearly toppling over before catching himself. The Puppetmaster observed them both, his puppet's limbs twitching in anticipation. Then, without warning, the puppet lunged, its blades aimed straight for Lee's chest. But Lee, despite his intoxicated state, moved like lightning. His body swayed drunkenly to the side, the blades grazing his flak jacket as he spun into a devastating kick. Drunken fist, swallows reversal. His foot connected with the puppet's head, sending it staggering back. The wood splintered, but the construct quickly righted itself, its damaged sections already knitting back together. Naruto seized the opportunity, channeling his chakra into a swirling sphere of energy between his palms. Rasengan. He dashed forward, aiming straight for the Puppetmaster's chest, but the man's fingers flicked, and the puppet intercepted, taking the full brunt of the attack. The force sent it flying into the trees, its body cracking but not breaking entirely. The Puppetmaster finally spoke, his voice a whispery rasp. "Persistent little insects. But you've only seen a fraction of my power." He raised his hands, and the forest trembled as three more puppets emerged from the undergrowth, each more grotesque than the last, one with serrated claws, another with a gaping maw of saw-like teeth, and the third wielding a chain whip that crackled with electricity. Naruto and Lee exchanged glances. Even drunk, Lee's fighting spirit burned bright. "Well, Naruto, it seems we have our work cut out for us." Lee slurred cheerfully, cracking his knuckles. Naruto smirked. "Yeah, but they don't know what they're up against." As the puppets advanced, the two shinobi braced themselves, their combined resolve unshaken. The real fight was just beginning. The battlefield was a chaotic storm of chakra and flying debris as Naruto Uzumaki squared off against the enigmatic Puppetmaster, his fingers dancing like spiders over unseen strings. The air hummed with tension as the Puppetmaster's mechanical warriors lunged forward, blades glinting under the moonlight. Naruto gritted his teeth, forming a shadow clone and a puff of smoke, the duplicate charging ahead to absorb the first strike while the real Naruto twisted midair, hurling a barrage of shuriken embedded with explosive tags. The resulting detonation sent one puppet spiraling into the dirt, its limbs twitching uselessly, but 3 more took its place, their movements eerily synchronized. Meanwhile, Rock Lee, his face flushed from his earlier indulgence in sake, stumbled into the fray with surprising grace. His movements were unpredictable, a drunken dance that somehow defied the Puppetmaster's calculations. You can't control what you can't predict. Lee slurred, lurching sideways as a razor-edged puppet arm sliced through the space where his head had been. With a sudden burst of sobriety, Lee's foot snapped upward in a devastating kick, shattering the puppet's torso into splinters. But the Puppetmaster only smirked, his fingers twitching as 2 more puppets unfolded from hidden compartments in their fallen brethren, their joints clicking ominously. Naruto, sensing the tide turning, felt the familiar surge of Kurama's chakra ripple through him. His whisker marks darkened, his nails sharpening into claws as orange energy wreathed his body. "Lee, cover me," he shouted, dashing forward in a blur. Lee obliged, his body spinning like a top as he unleashed a flurry of kicks, forcing the puppets onto the defensive. Naruto seized the opening, weaving hand signs with lightning speed before slamming his palms onto the ground. Earth-style, mud wall. The earth erupted, forming a barrier that trapped one puppet in hardening clay. But the Puppetmaster wasn't done, his fingers jerked upward, and the remaining puppets split apart, their limbs detaching into whirling saw blades that carved through Naruto's defenses. Lee, panting but undeterred, wiped sweat from his brow before reaching for the weights strapped to his legs. With a grunt, he unlatched them, letting the heavy plates crash into the dirt. The ground trembled as Lee's body seemed to lighten, his muscles coiled like springs. "Now I can fight seriously," he declared, vanishing in a burst of speed that left afterimages in his wake. The Puppetmaster's eyes widened as Lee appeared behind him, a spinning kick aimed at his skull. At the last second, a puppet interposed itself, taking the blow meant for its master, but the force sent it careening into the trees. Naruto, seeing his chance, funneled Kurama's chakra into a massive Rasengan, the sphere hissing with raw energy. He lunged, but the Puppetmaster's lips curled into a grin. "Foolish," he hissed, yanking his strings. The shattered remains of the puppets suddenly reassembled, their broken parts fusing into a monstrous, multi-limbed abomination that swiped at Naruto midair. The impact sent him skidding backward, his Rasengan dissipating. Lee, however, wasn't giving up. His body burned with the strain of the 8 gates, his veins bulging as he pushed past his limits. "Gate of opening, release," he roared, his skin flushing crimson. The Puppetmaster barely had time to react before Lee was upon him, fists moving faster than sight. Each strike shattered puppet limbs, each kick cratered the earth. But the Puppetmaster was no slouch, his own hands blurred as he redirected his strings, weaving a net of razor wire that sliced through the air. Lee dodged most, but one strand caught his arm, drawing blood. He didn't flinch. "Pain is nothing," he bellowed, tearing through the wire with sheer force. Naruto, recovering, felt something shift inside him. Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind. "You're holding back, kid. If you want to win, stop hesitating." Naruto clenched his fists. He knew what he had to do. Closing his eyes, he reached deeper, feeling the 9 tails power surge violently. His cloak erupted into full form, tails of chakra lashing behind him as his pupils slit like a fox's. "Let's end this," he growled, launching forward with enough speed to rival Lee. The Puppetmaster, now cornered, snarled as his final puppet unfolded into a colossal, scorpion-like monstrosity, its stinger dripping venom. But Naruto was already in motion, weaving through its strikes like water, his Rasengan growing larger, wilder. Lee, meanwhile, charged head-on, his final kick aimed at the puppet's core. The simultaneous impacts, Naruto's Rasengan tearing through the puppet's chest, Lee's kick shattering its spine, sent a shockwave rippling through the battlefield. The puppet exploded in a hail of shrapnel, the force sending the Puppetmaster flying. He crashed against a tree, his strings severed, his puppets lifeless. Naruto and Lee stood panting, their bodies battered but unbroken. The Puppetmaster's mask cracked, revealing a face twisted in disbelief. "Impossible. My art. Unbeatable," he rasped. Naruto stepped forward, his chakra cloak fading. "You underestimated us," he said simply. As the dust settled, the moon hung high, casting long shadows over the wreckage. The fight was over, but the echoes of their clash would linger, a testament to the limits they had shattered. The air crackled with tension as Naruto Uzumaki wiped the sweat from his brow, his breath ragged from the relentless assault of the Puppetmaster's mechanical army. The battlefield was littered with shattered puppets, their twisted limbs sparking weakly, but more kept coming, each one more vicious than the last. Across the ruined village square, Rock Lee, swaying slightly from the effects of his drunken state, spun into a wild series of kicks, his movements unpredictable yet devastating. "You won't lay a hand on my friends." Lee slurred, his voice thick with determination as he shattered another puppet with a spinning heel drop. The Puppetmaster, hidden within his armored command puppet, sneered from behind his control strings. "Fools! You think brute force can overcome my genius?" His fingers danced, and a fresh wave of puppets surged forward, their blades glinting under the moonlight. Naruto gritted his teeth, summoning the last of his chakra. "Lee, we need to end this now," he shouted, forming a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A dozen copies of Naruto materialized, each lunging at the puppets with kunai and Rasengan sparks flickering in their palms. Lee, despite his drunken haze, felt the urgency in Naruto's voice. His body moved on instinct, recalling the forbidden techniques Guy-sensei had warned him about. "If this is my limit, then I'll break past it." With a roar, he unleashed the eighth gate's initial surge, his skin flushing crimson as raw power exploded through his veins. The Puppetmaster's eyes widened. This wasn't part of his calculations. Lee blurred forward, a green comet streaking through the battlefield, shattering puppets with each strike. Naruto saw his chance. While Lee kept the Puppetmaster distracted, he focused, gathering nature energy for a sage art, massive Rasengan. The orb of swirling chakra grew in his palm, humming with destructive force. "Now," he yelled, charging forward as Lee delivered a final, earth-shattering kick to the command puppet's chest, cracking its armor. Naruto slammed the Rasengan home, the impact sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Puppetmaster screamed as his creation exploded around him, the blast hurling him into the rubble. Silence fell. The last of the puppets collapsed, lifeless. Lee dropped to one knee, the toll of the eighth gate draining him, but he managed a wobbly grin. "Did we win?" Naruto, panting, offered a hand. "Yeah. Thanks to you." The Puppetmaster groaned, struggling to rise, but his will was broken. "Impossible. My perfect designs." As the dust settled, the villagers emerged from hiding, their faces a mix of awe and gratitude. The battle had not just defeated a tyrant, it had proven that even the most desperate, unrefined strength could triumph over cold, calculated cruelty. In the days that followed, the village began to rebuild, but something fundamental had shifted. Naruto and Lee's bond deepened, their trust now unshakable. Meanwhile, whispers of the Puppetmaster's defeat spread, inspiring others to resist oppression. The world would remember this night, not just for the destruction, but for the moment two unlikely heroes, pushed beyond their limits, proved that courage and camaraderie could shatter even the most unbreakable chains. And as the sun rose over the scarred but healing village, Naruto and Lee stood side by side, ready for whatever came next.